I never planned on cheating. That's the line every woman starts with, isn't it? But I swear to God it's the truth. I wasn't unhappy. I wasn't angry. I wasn't lonely. I loved my husband, still do, in a quiet, soul-deep way that never left me, even when my clothes were somewhere on the floor of a hotel room and I was doing the one thing I swore I never would. His name is Mark, my husband. We've been married 8 years, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't good. It is. He's the kind of man who brings me coffee before I even get out of bed, who knows how I like my eggs and which side of the bed I never sleep on. We laugh. We talk. We have sex. Not fireworks every night sex, no, but warm, familiar, tangled under the covers kind of lovemaking. The kind that doesn't need words anymore. The kind that feels like home. So no, there was no fight. No Cold War between us. No neglect. Just a girls' weekend in Miami. It was Rachel's idea. Her bachelorette party. She wanted sun, music, and bottomless drinks, and we gave it to her. For women, one sweet, a Friday that bled into a Saturday in a haze of tequila shots and hotel poolside flirting. I don't even remember how we met them, the two men. Only that it was past midnight, and the club was packed, and I was laughing too loud because Rachel had just dared me to kiss a stranger. I didn't kiss him. Not then. But he smiled, the kind of smile you feel in your stomach, and I didn't look away. Their names were Jay and Marco. Friends, I think. Or maybe cousins. I don't remember now. They were older than us, maybe mid-30s. Confident in that subtle, steady way. Not arrogant. Just sure of themselves. And when they spoke, they didn't rush. They looked you in the eye. They leaned in when you talked, like your words were something they'd been waiting for. God help me, I was flattered. Mark would have hated them. Not because they were bad guys, but because he would have seen right through the quiet danger in their eyes. He's protective that way, always sensing things before I do. He would have pulled me away, wrapped an arm around my waist, kissed my temple, and told me it was getting late. But he wasn't there. I was. And I was drunk. Not messy drunk. Not sloppy. Just warm. Loose. A little dizzy in my skin. And when Rachel disappeared with her fiancé's brother and Kate was half asleep in the Uber home, I stayed behind. I told myself I'd only dance one more song. I just wanted to feel the bass one last time, let the music thrum in my chest before calling it a night. But one song turned into two. And then Jay leaned in, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, and whispered something. I don't even remember the words, only the heat of his breath against my skin and how close Marco was behind me, his hand on the small of my back, as if they'd rehearsed this choreography 1,000 times. I should have said no. God, I replay that moment over and over. The exit was right there. The Uber app was open on my phone. I could have left. I could have gone back to the suite, crawled into bed, woken up hungover and guilty about nothing more than a flirtation I'd never admit. But I didn't leave. I looked at both of them, the way they watched me so calmly, so intently, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not desire exactly. Not lust. It was sharper than that. A hunger. For risk. For recklessness. For something that wasn't safe or expected or wrapped in soft domesticity. Come with us, Jay said, his voice like velvet. And I did. We took a cab. I sat in the middle, their thighs pressed against mine, the air in the back seat thick with anticipation. I was quiet, not because I was unsure, but because it felt surreal. Like I was watching myself from somewhere outside my own skin. A version of me I didn't recognize and couldn't stop. Jay smelled like cologne and leather. Marco had this faint trace of saltwater and something smoky, like he'd stepped off a boat and straight into a bar. They didn't touch me, not really, just small things. Jay's hand grazing my knee when the cab turned. Marco's fingers brushing a curl from my shoulder. It was enough to light my skin on fire. I texted Mark from the elevator of their hotel. Going to bed early. Love you. My hands didn't even tremble. The room was nice, sleek, modern, high up with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the Miami skyline. I remember the hum of the city, the distant sound of laughter and sirens and car horns below. And inside it was quiet. Just us. 3 shadows under the low, golden light. Marco poured drinks, something dark and expensive. I took a sip and let it burn down my throat. Jay stood close behind me, not touching, just waiting. Watching. There was a mirror across from us, and I caught sight of myself there, my flushed cheeks, the slight wobble in my stance, the unmistakable curve of a smile I didn't recognize. You okay? Jay asked, his voice low. I nodded. I didn't speak. Words felt too small for what I was doing. Marco came to stand in front of me, and for a second they just looked at me. One on each side, like they were deciding whether to move or let me walk away. The power shifted in that moment. I felt it. I wasn't trapped. I was choosing. And that terrified me more than anything else. I kissed Marco first. It was instinctual, like my body decided before my mind could object. His lips were soft but firm, his hand coming up to cradle my jaw. And then I felt Jay behind me, the warmth of his chest, the weight of his hands on my hips. I gasped into Marco's mouth when Jay pressed against my back, and I felt the last threads of hesitation snap. Stop being real after that. Clothes fell away. Hands blurred. I don't remember who undressed me. Maybe it was both of them. My dress hit the floor, and I stood there in just my underwear, trembling from something that wasn't cold. Jay kissed the back of my neck. Marco whispered something in Spanish. I didn't understand but felt deep in my stomach. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The bed was cool. My skin wasn't. And then everything. Heat. Hands. Mouths. The sensation of being completely surrounded, completely desired, completely not me. I remember the moment it shifted from wild curiosity to something darker, not painful but consuming. Like I had stepped into a version of myself that had always lived deep inside, waiting to be let out. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about them. It was about me. The woman I was in that bed wasn't Mark's wife. She was just herself. And I didn't want it to end, but of course it did. Eventually the haze lifted. The room cooled. The city outside kept humming, indifferent to what I had just done. Jay was the first to fall asleep, or maybe he just turned away. Marco lay beside me for a moment, silent, his fingers lazily tracing patterns on my thigh. I stared at the ceiling, naked and suddenly unmistakably awake. There was no guilt yet. No regret. Only silence. The kind that comes after a storm, when everything looks the same but nothing is. I got dressed slowly, the fabric feeling foreign against my skin. Marco didn't ask me to stay. Jay didn't say goodbye. I left the room at 4:17 a.m. I remember the time because I checked it, wondering if Mark was still asleep. He was. Of course he was. Back at the suite, I slipped inside without waking anyone. I washed my face, climbed into bed beside Rachel, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. I told myself I'd forget it, that it was a one-time thing. A slip. A secret. But secrets don't stay quiet forever. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. I lay there on the narrow bed beside Rachel, my body still aching with the ghosts of touch, my mind spinning in slow, nauseating circles. Outside the window, dawn crept in soft and pink, casting everything in a too gentle light. Like the morning didn't know what I'd done. Like it dared to be beautiful anyway. No one noticed. Not really. Not when I stood by the sink brushing my teeth, eyes hollow. Not when I poured mimosas with shaky hands or laughed too loud at Rachel's hungover complaints. I played my part well. Years of marriage had taught me how to wear a calm face over chaos. But inside something had cracked. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message from Jay or Marco. There was nothing. No, had a great time. No, don't worry, we won't say anything. Just silence, the kind that feels personal. Like even they knew I didn't belong in that room, not really. Like I'd trespassed into a version of myself I had no right to claim. Back home things felt the same. That was the strangest part. Mark picked me up from the airport in his favorite hoodie, grinning like he'd missed me every hour I was gone. He kissed me at the curb and loaded my suitcase into the trunk with one hand like he always did. I watched him from the passenger seat, his profile, the way he hummed with the radio, the rhythm of his fingers on the steering wheel, and I felt my stomach twist with a quiet, crawling guilt. He didn't deserve this. He wasn't perfect, no one is, but he was good. Solid. A man who never made me question my worth, who still made me coffee without asking, who rubbed my feet when I was too tired to speak. I stared at his hand resting on the gearshift and remembered how Marco's hand had been there just a day before. And Jay's mouth on my skin. Two strangers who saw me as something wild for a night, and then let me disappear without a word. I wanted to tell Mark. God, I did. I rehearsed it in my head 100 times. In the shower at the grocery store, in the car while waiting at a red light. I imagined his face when I said it. The confusion. The pain. The anger. I pictured how he'd look away, then back trying to decide if I was still the woman he married or just some echo in her skin. But I couldn't, so I didn't. Instead, I became careful. I made sure my phone stayed clean, no lingering texts, no Instagram tags from that night. I deleted the Uber receipt. Erased my browser history. It felt dirty covering up what I'd done, but I did it anyway. Because guilt doesn't erase choices. It only dulls them long enough to fake your way through dinner. For a while, I thought I could move on. But something had changed in me. Not love, I still loved Mark. But desire. It wasn't dead anymore. It was wide awake and watching. And once you've fed that hunger really fed it, it doesn't shrink. It waits. I didn't plan on seeing them again. But temptation doesn't always knock. Sometimes it texts. And sometimes you answer. It started with a photo. Just a beach. Late sun. 2 tumblers of amber liquid on a glass table. No faces. The caption said, "Back in town." Same hotel. No names. No direct message. But I knew. My heart didn't race. It pulsed slow, heavy, deliberate, like a drum you only hear when everything else is quiet. I stared at the photo longer than I meant to. Then I locked my phone and told myself I wasn't going to reply. I held out for 4 hours. By the 5th, I typed. Still the same room? No emoji. No flirting. Just a message from a woman who should have known better, but didn't care anymore. Jay responded with a location pin. Marco added a fire emoji and nothing else. That was it. No demands. No expectations. Just a door left open, and me, already halfway through it. I told Mark I was going to a late dinner with an old friend. I even put on the gold hoops he likes, the soft sweater that falls off one shoulder. I kissed him goodbye at the front door and hated how real it felt, how automatic. The ease with which I slipped into the lie terrified me more than the lie itself. The hotel was downtown. Classy. Discreet. When the elevator doors opened on their floor, my stomach dropped. Not from nerves. From what? The kind that's buried in your ribcage, silent for years until someone or two someones unlock it with a single glance. I didn't knock. Marco opened the door before I raised my hand, as if they'd both been standing on the other side, waiting. Jay was shirtless. Marco wore only jeans. There was no drink. No music. No pretense. They didn't ask if I was sure. I didn't ask what this meant. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even glamorous. It was raw. Physical. Charged. I don't know how long we were there. Time dissolved. Clothes disappeared. There were hands on my skin and lips at my throat, and that same impossible feeling from Miami, like I'd stepped out of my life and into some version of myself I didn't recognize, but wanted. Only this time I wasn't drunk. And I didn't feel out of control. I felt deliberate. There were moments between movements, between breaths, when I caught my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look ashamed. I looked alive. That terrified me more than anything. When it was over, I stayed longer this time. I lay between them, heart still racing, sweat cooling on my skin. Jay lit a cigarette, holding it between 2 fingers like a question he didn't dare ask. Marco whispered something against my shoulder. I didn't respond. I just stared at the ceiling, listening to the low hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of sirens rising from the street below. This wasn't love. This wasn't escape. This was me unraveling something I didn't understand. I left just after midnight. Mark was asleep when I got home. One arm flung across my pillow, breathing soft and even. I stood in the doorway, watching him in the dark, my throat tight with something I couldn't name. I slid under the covers and turned away from him. I thought it would get easier after the second time. It didn't. It started with a message I almost deleted. A DM from a username I didn't recognize. No profile photo. Just a gray silhouette and one sentence. "We have a proposition for you." I should have ignored it. Should have reported it, blocked, laughed, something. But my fingers hovered, heart too curious, and I opened it. Inside. Jay said you might be open-minded. There are 3 of us. One night. $10,000. $10,000. I stared at the number, blinking like it might change. Like it might shrink into something less indecent, less real. But it didn't. I read the message 5 more times. My first reaction wasn't disgust. It wasn't even fear. It was why me? I closed the app. Put my phone away. Pretended it didn't exist. But that night in bed, Mark lay beside me reading, and I couldn't stop staring at his hand on the page, his wedding band catching the bedside lamp's glow. I loved that hand. Loved that man. And still, my mind wasn't here. I was thinking about what $10,000 meant. The new brakes we couldn't afford last month. The slow leak in the roof we kept patching over. The credit card we kept pretending wasn't a problem. I thought about how I hadn't bought a single new dress in over a year without guilt. How I hesitated before ordering wine at dinner. How I sometimes smiled too tightly when Mark said, "We're fine, baby," because I knew we weren't. And then I thought about them. Jay, Marco, and whoever the third was. I told myself I was just curious. That didn't mean I'd say yes. But I answered anyway. Where? They replied within minutes. Same hotel. 8th floor. Room 808. Tomorrow night. Discretion guaranteed. No expectations until you're in the room. I didn't respond. Not that night. Not all the next day. But by 7:30 p.m., I was standing in front of my closet, hands shaking, choosing black lingerie I hadn't worn in years. By 8:10, I was knocking on the door. The hallway outside room 808 was silent, unnervingly so. I stood there for a few seconds after knocking, my knuckles still hovering in the air like they hadn't gotten the memo. My heartbeat felt unnatural. Not quick, loud. Like it wanted out. I could have turned back. Elevator just 10 steps behind me. Phone in my purse with 100 better choices. But I didn't move. The door opened and Jay stood there, calm as ever. Behind him, Marco leaned against the minibar, swirling a drink. And on the couch, the third man. Someone new. He was older. Mid-40s, maybe? Neatly dressed in a slate gray button-down, the top 2 buttons undone. He didn't smile. Just looked at me like I was a puzzle he already knew how to solve. Jay stepped aside wordlessly. I walked in. The room was dim, the curtains drawn, the city bleeding in through the gaps in golden stripes. Music played low, slow, pulsing, more like breath than sound. On the table by the bed was a neat envelope. I didn't have to open it. I already knew what was inside. $10,000. Jay handed me a glass of wine. I took it without thinking. My throat was dry. My hands felt too far away from the rest of me. Last chance, Marco said, nodding toward the door. I didn't speak. I didn't nod. I just kicked off my shoes. It wasn't like before. The first time was chaos. The second, craving. This time? This was a transaction. And yet, the strangest part? I wasn't numb. I was hyper-aware of the way their hands moved across me, coordinated like dancers. The way the older man, he never told me his name, didn't even touch me at first. He just watched. Studied. Like I was something valuable he'd purchased and wanted to enjoy slowly. And I let him. All of them. There was something terrifying about giving in completely. Not just physically. Mentally. Stepping so far out of myself I didn't recognize my own voice, the curve of my back, the flush in my cheeks when 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me like they'd waited their whole lives to unwrap this moment. I didn't think about Mark. Not during. Not even once. It was too far from him. I was too far from him. And that, more than the act itself, was what undid me. Afterward, I lay still. The others drifted into the bathroom, into sleep, into whatever men do after they've gotten what they wanted. I stayed staring at the ceiling, heart still thudding like I was running. From what I didn't know. The envelope sat where I left it. Untouched. $10,000. For one night. For a secret. I showered. Dressed slowly. Tucked the envelope into my purse like it was nothing. Jay opened the door for me again. Said nothing. Just that same quiet, unreadable look. As if we both knew. This was the last time. When I got home, Mark was watching a documentary, half asleep. He looked up, smiled, and patted the couch beside him. I slid in under his arm, curled into him. Good dinner, he asked, brushing his lips against my hair. I said. I lied. And I cried. Silently. So he wouldn't feel it. You'd think the guilt would hit hardest right after. But it didn't. It came later. Quiet. Creeping. The kind that doesn't announce itself with tears or panic, just a slow unraveling. I'd be folding laundry and feel it catch in my throat. I'd be sitting across from Mark at dinner, watching him talk about refinancing the car, and suddenly realize I hadn't heard a word. My mind would be somewhere else. Back in that hotel room. Or worse, hovering just before it. That moment when I still had a choice. I kept the money. That's the part one can't explain, not even to myself. I told myself I'd donate it. I didn't. I told myself I'd hide it. I didn't. I put it in a small box at the back of my closet, behind old scarves and a broken hair dryer. And every few days, I'd check it, like it might have disappeared on its own, like this whole thing could still be undone. Mark never noticed. Or maybe he did in his quiet way. He started asking if I was okay more often. Little things. You seem tired. You've been quiet lately. I'd smile. Nod. Blame it on work, hormones, the weather, anything but the truth. Because how do you tell someone you betrayed them for money? For curiosity? For something you don't even fully understand? One night, I came home and found him fixing the cabinet hinge in the kitchen. He looked up, dust on his hands, eyes soft the way they always were when he saw me. Hey, he said. Stay there for a sec. I just like looking at you. I almost told him then. Almost. But I didn't. Because what could I say? That I missed the thrill? That I felt something break loose inside me that night and couldn't seem to put it back? That I loved him deeply and wholly and still chose to become a woman I didn't even recognize? So I kissed him. Told him I loved him. And then I sat in the shower that night and let the water scald my skin until I couldn't tell what was steam and what was shame. The worst part? He still thinks I'm good. He still looks at me like I'm home. Like I'm the one solid thing in his world. And maybe I could be. Maybe I could bury this deep enough. Lock that part of me away. Pretend it was just a chapter one never finished reading. But I know the truth. It didn't only happen once. It didn't even only happen. It changed me. And now? I'm not sure I can go back. It didn't happen again. Not with Jay. Not with Marco. Not with the stranger in the gray shirt. Not physically. But inside? Inside it never really stopped. I still have the envelope. Still unopened. I've touched it 100 times, moved it once, even placed it in the trash, then took it back out. It's not about the money. It's about what it represents. That I said yes. That I crossed the line, not by accident, but by choice. I started noticing things after that. Men on the street who looked a little too long. The barista who brushed my hand as he handed me my drink. The colleague who lingered a few seconds too close in the elevator. I used to look away. Now sometimes I don't. I don't act on it. I don't flirt. I don't plan. But I feel it, that buzz beneath my skin. That low hum of power I never used to notice. And then there's Mark. Sweet, faithful, loving Mark. He hasn't changed. He's still kind. Still touches me in the morning with that sleepy affection that makes my chest ache. Still tells me I'm beautiful when I don't feel it. Still trusts me. And that's the part that breaks me now. Because every time he smiles at me like I'm his whole world. I remember I left that world. For a night. For two. For a moment I thought would disappear. And I wonder if he sees it in my eyes, that tiny shift. That secret I wear like a second skin. Sometimes when he's asleep, I lie beside him and whisper. I'm sorry. Very quietly. Just once. Not because I think it changes anything. But because I don't want to forget that I should feel sorry. Will I ever tell him? No. I don't think so. Not because I want to protect myself. But because I know what it would do to him. This burden is mine. And I will carry it. With mascara and soft smiles. With folded laundry and packed lunches. With Sunday brunches and shared Netflix shows. You'd never know to look at me. I'm the wife. The good one. The loyal one. Except. I'm not. Not really. Not anymore.